Ancient Hebrew Research Center. He's been studying Paleo, which is the original language in Hebrew, for many years. He's got a lot of books out, along with he's got the beginning of a dictionary, basically. And I love that dictionary, I really do. And I don't know how long his books are going to last, but they are good. And it's nice to go back to get the original Hebrew to see what in the world is being said in the scripture. And you can really put a beautiful answer to a lot of misunderstanding of the scripture. So right now, I'd like you to welcome Jeff Brenner.
First, I'd like to say thank you to Ben. Where's Ben? There he is. Hey, thank you for inviting me and your group, Beit Met. You guys have done an excellent job with this conference. I just want to thank you guys. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm really impressed with the crowd here on a weekday, too. I need the thing for, is this thing working?
Just turn it on, yeah.
Just turn it on?
Ah,
okay. And advance slides by arrow up? Nope.
No, page. Page.
Page. Page.
Board your computer, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There we go. All right, it works. A little introduction about myself. My name is Jeff. I started the Ancient Hebrew Research Center back in 1999. I recognize that basically what you're going to get here is an introduction to the Hebrew language. What I found is that most of us view the Hebrew language from a Greek perspective. Sounds kind of contradictory because Hebrew is not Greek, but we read it like it's Greek. Most of us make that mistake, including me. I do it all the time. Because we've been so ingrained with Greco-Roman culture that we think like Greco-Romans. So what I'm going to introduce you here is a basics, a small overview of how the ancient Hebrew language and alphabet works. How many of you here have been learning Hebrew? Let's see a show of hands. Wow. That's pretty impressive. How many here, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, how many of you here wouldn't know an aleph from an ayin to save your life? Yeah, there's a few. Okay. We've all been there. I'd also like to thank one other person. That's my wife. She couldn't be here with me, but she is listening because she's on Pal Talk, and as I understand it, they are streaming it.
Yes, she is on.
And she is on. My wife, Habibi, she's in Pal Talk. We've been Pal Talk members for a number of years. How many here are with Pal Talk? Yeah, quite a few of you. All right. All right, let's go ahead and jump right on into the slides here. The most crucial ingredient to communication is a common understanding of words. If you're going to communicate with somebody, you have to be able to understand them with what they mean, and they have to understand you. When I moved from California, most of you here, I assume, are from the West Coast. I was born and raised on the West Coast. We have a certain way of talking, a certain way of thinking. But you know what? Over on the East Coast, they do things differently. I was with a friend of mine. We were driving down the road, and we were talking, and I just moved there to Pennsylvania, and we come to an intersection. He says, go up, go up. I go, up? We're on flat land here. What are you talking about? He says, up, go to the right. What do you, I don't understand. He had explained to me, over there, up is right, down is left. I didn't. There's a lot of examples of this where on the East Coast things are different. Then I moved to Mississippi. You want to understand how crucial it is to understand other people's words from their perspective. Move around the country a lot. We're going to take a look at the Hebrew alphabet. Just kind of as an introduction, I'm not going to be able to have the time here to teach you, but and most of you are probably somewhat familiar with it. We're going to take a look at Hebrew roots. English language and most languages, and even in modern Hebrew today, you learn words as though they're an entity to themselves. But in the biblical Hebrew language, words are dependent upon other words, which are dependent upon roots, which are dependent upon other roots, And all of these help to define these different words. So it's a root-oriented system. We're going to look at Hebrew words, Hebrew thought. As I said, they think differently than we do. And we're going to take a look at some Hebrew word studies. This is the Hebrew alphabet that most of us are used to. Okay, the alphabet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, all the way down to the top. Most of you recognize this. However, that is not how Hebrew was originally written. Okay? It was written like this. They're pictographs, similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs. Every letter was a picture of something. See, the Hebrew language is very picture-oriented. Not only are the letters pictures, but each Hebrew word is a picture of action. And we'll see some examples of that. Very different from our language, which is abstract from the Greek concepts. This is the Hebrew letter Aleph. Originally, it was a picture of an ox head, exactly. And it represents the idea of strength. Very good. See, a lot of you already know this. That then kind of switched, it kind of evolved a little bit into this. Anybody recognize that? Yeah. Okay, but it became this in the Paleo-Hebrew. A lot of you are familiar with the term Paleo-Hebrew. This is where the Paleo-Hebrew Aleph comes from. It's transition, and then it becomes this in the modern Hebrew. Going back to the ox head, to this, you all recognize that? It's our letter A. The really neat thing about learning Hebrew is it's not that hard because our letters are there. In fact, if you take our alphabet, A through Z, almost every single one of them are identical to Hebrew as it was written 3,000 years ago. Amazing. Which makes learning the Hebrew alphabet a lot easier if you understand this connection. Okay. Here again we have the letter Aleph. Transition to this in the Paleo-Hebrew, and then it became our number 1. Okay, you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are all the Hebrew letters Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet. Have you heard these called? What have you heard these called before? Not Arabic numerals. Guess what? They were Hebrew before they were Aramaic. Okay, some of you in here don't know much about Hebrew. You couldn't tell an Aleph from an Ayin. Somebody want to volunteer and be one of those people that says, I don't know Hebrew? Okay, there's one in the back over there. You don't know a thing about Hebrew at all. About that much. Okay. Can you read that? Not a chance. I'll tell you what, let me help you out a little bit. Can you read that letter right there? A. How about this one? A D. How about this one? An M. Everybody knows that. What does that spell? I thought you guys didn't know Hebrew. You see how easy it is? Here is the ancient Hebrew alphabet, the pictographs, and the name of each letter. And if you'll notice that each of these are pictures that we might recognize. We've got the Aleph. Over here we have the hand, Yad. What's the Hebrew word for hand? Yad, that's its name. This is another connection for helping you to learn Hebrew. The name of each letter is what its picture is. But what's the Hebrew word beit mean? A house. There's the bet. It's actually a picture of a house. That's the way that the ancient Hebrew alphabet works. Let's take a look at some Hebrew words. What is this word? Okay, it's Av. Av. Abba comes later. It's actually borrowed from Aramaic into Hebrew, into modern Hebrew. But the Hebrew word is Av. What does Av mean? Okay, we have a couple of problems here. The first problem is that these letters are not Hebrew. Didn't I just say that this was the Hebrew alphabet? I did because it is today, but it's not. What is the origins of this alphabet? Babylonian, Aramaic. These are Aramaic square script that's used to write Hebrew today. If you open up a Hebrew Bible today, it's going to be an Aramaic square script, not even Hebrew. Father is how you define this word. Father is an abstract concept. You cannot draw me a picture of a father. You could draw me a picture of a man, maybe a man with a beard, maybe a man with a child. You could draw me pictures, but you can't draw a picture of a father. Father is an abstract concept. That's Greek thinking. So my question to you is, if this is Aramaic script and this is Greek definition, where's the Hebrew? It's not there. We're not learning Hebrew, folks. We're not learning Hebrew. Here's the Aleph. Here's the letter Bet. Put them together, and you have the strength of the house. What holds up the tent? What gives it its structure and its support? The tent poles. That is the definition of the word av, is the tent pole. It is what gives structure and strength to the tent or to the house. Now the Hebrews understood that concept and applied it to the father because he's the tent pole of the family. He's the one who gives structure and stability to the family, the strength of the family. You see how in the Hebrew language, the Hebrews understood all their concepts, all their words as movement of action, pictures of action. Let's take a look at another one. The Hebrew word am. What is am? Mother. Mother. The strong water. Here we have the strength, the ox head, and here we have the mem, which is a picture of water. What is strong water? In the ancient cultures, ancient times, the way they made glue was they would take a pot of boiling water and add in all their scraps from the animals, hides, hooves, all of these things, and boil this. And this stuff would boil and create a sticky, gooey mass on the surface, and it was glue. So the mother, the ancient Hebrews understood as the glue of the family. She's the one. Husbands, hug your wives. You're the wives are the glue of the family. My wife is the glue of my family. Let's take a look at another one. Ben. The first letter is the letter Bet. Picture of a house. The Nun, the one next to it there, the letter Nun, is a picture of a seed. When a seed drops to the ground, it sprouts out its roots, grows a plant, creates another seed, drops it down to the ground, sprouts, grows up. You see this continual? This letter Nun means to be continual. It is also a Hebrew word meaning the heir or the son. It's another word for son. The Nun means to continue, to be the next generation. So the Hebrew word ben in its pictographic script says the house that continues. That is the function of the sons. This is the Hebrew word for the son. The one who continues the family lineage. What's this word? Al or El. Very good. This is the Hebrew word that's often translated as God. We're going to take a look at this word a little bit more detail tomorrow. But we have the ox, which is strength. And then we have the lamed, which is a picture of a shepherd's staff. Shepherd's staff represented authority. So the strong authority. Who's our strong authority? El. Roots. Roots are very important when studying the Hebrew language because all words come from a root. Without understanding the root, you can't understand the word. So let's take a look at a couple of roots. Here's the word El. These are parent roots. What I call a parent root are words that are composed of two letters, sticking two letters together and forming parent roots. Here we have El, dog. What is dog? Fish. Good. Esh. Okay, man comes from that, but Esh is fire. Etz is a tree. Har, mountain. Bar, grain. Dam, blood. Lev, heart. These are all foundational words. These are the parent roots of the rest of the entire Hebrew alphabet, or the Hebrew vocabulary. Child roots are formed by placing a vowel inside the parent root. How many of you have heard there are no vowels in Hebrew? How many of you have heard that? It's wrong. No matter where you heard it, it's wrong. There are 4 vowels in the ancient Hebrew language. The aleph, the he, the vav, and the yod. Now, each of these work as a consonant, but they also double as vowels, much like our letter Y. Our letter Y is a consonant like in the word yellow, but it's also a vowel like in the word fly. These 4 letters work the same way. By taking a parent root and adding one of these vowels to it, you create a child root. Now, each one of these roots are going to be related in meaning. Here's a parent root, lach. It's a lamed, which is a shepherd's staff or any staff. and the palm of a hand. If I put a staff in my palm of my hand, what am I going to do? What? Walk. I heard it. Walk. Leave. I'm going to walk. That's what this parent root means, is to walk. It's the staff in the hand. It means to walk. Now let's put a hay in front of it. Make the child root out of that, and we have the word halach. How many of you are familiar with the word halach? Very, very, very common. Used several thousand times in the biblical text, and it means to walk. La'ach. This is a root to the word malach. Now don't confuse that with melech, king. This is malach. Anybody know what malach is? Messenger. A messenger is one who walks for another. You notice that how each one of these words are related to each other, and they're all related to the root. An adopted root is taking the parent root, like this word par. Par means a bull. Okay, a par is a bull. And if I place another consonant in it, like parak, we have a word that means to break apart. Have you ever heard the term bull in a china shop? Okay. All right. Par is a bull. All of the adopted roots that come from this have a similar meaning. Paras, to split apart. Parach, to burst open. Parak, to tear away. Parats, to break out. Parad, to divide apart. Okay, now these are all adopted roots. You know, you're starting to see how the Hebrew language is, each word is not independent of itself. It's related to other words. They're like a family. And you have to understand all. That's the reason for my lexicon is that I group all of the words and roots together that are related, so that you don't just get a definition of one word. You get a definition of the whole root and all of its related words, because they all help to paint the picture of what these words mean. Here we have the word melech. Melech, king. It is the lach, meaning to walk, and the mem in front of it. What does mem mean? What's this picture? Water. Water is mighty. Think of the sea, Yam, the sea. So it's the mighty one who walks. You see, in Hebrew thought the king was not someone who just sat on the throne and ruled over the people. He was one who went out and walked among the people. What did Yahweh do in the desert? What does it say there? He's going to walk among you in your camp. Here again we have the parent root lach. We put a hay in front of it. We have the word halach, which is the child root, meaning to walk. Now let's make a noun out of it and put a hay on the end of it, and we have the word halacha. What does halacha mean? How to walk, the way you walk, the customs, the things that you do. Halacha. Melech. We have the parent root lach. We make the adopted root malach. What is malach? It's the verb form. Melech is the noun king. Malach is the verb form, meaning to reign. Pretty simple. Malach means to reign. That is also the noun melech, meaning king. But we can also add a hay on the end of it. We have malcha. What's malcha? Queen. Just the feminine form. Or how about malchut? Kingdom. Okay, all of these are related. Let's get into Hebrew thought. There's a little bit of an overview of how the alphabet works to create roots and to create words. Let's get into Hebrew thought. What does this mean? Right on. Right on. Thumbs up. Right on. Need a ride. All right. Where does this idea of thumbs up come from? Caesar. Why? How? Life or death. So if Caesar, the gladiator's got the other gladiator on the ground. He's holding a sword. His foot is on his neck. He looks up at Caesar, and Caesar goes like this. What does that mean? Okay, the majority of you are saying he lives. Some of you are saying he dies. What's going on here? This means take your sword and put it to his throat. Oh, I see some mouths open. This means throw your sword to the ground. This means he lives. This means he dies. What happened? 2,000 years now, this is good and this is bad. What happened? Over time, can concepts and ideas evolve and change? Sure they can. That's just one example of many. I like roll up your window on your car. How many of us still have things you can roll the window up? Most of us got buttons. Yeah, well, I do too, I confess. Okay, most of the cars now, you push a button, but you still say roll up the window, don't we? Okay, but we don't roll it up anymore. You button it up. All right, time. Time's an interesting concept, especially in any culture or any language. Let's take a look at it from a Hebraic perspective. The past and the future. Let me ask you this. The past, is that in front of you or behind you? Behind you? What? He catches on quick. If you haven't noticed, most of my questions are trick questions. So always say the opposite of what you think. All right, most of us would say that the past is behind us. Why? Because we see it as walking a line. Okay, that's what I've already walked. I'm going to walk this way, so that's in front of us. That's Greek thinking. If we read our Bible from a Greek perspective, we're going to read it wrong. We've got to change our mindset and start thinking Hebraically when we read our Bibles, whether it's the Tanakh, the Torah, the Brit HaChadashah. Okay, the Hebrew word for yesterday is tamul. Tamul. That's yesterday. Yesterday, that's the past. So you're saying that's behind me, right? It comes from the root mul, which means to be in front of you. The word for tomorrow is macher. Macher is tomorrow. It comes from the root achar, which means to be behind you. So in Hebrew thought, the past is in front of you, the future is behind you. Why? You can see it. The past is laid out in front of you to see. You know the past. So it's out in front of you to see. But the future is behind you. You cannot see it. You see how it's a very simple concept, and it makes sense. But we don't think that way when we're reading the Bible. Is it possible to read the Bible with Greek perspective and get 180 degrees wrong from what the author intended? Yes. 100% of the time. No, I wouldn't say 100, maybe 99. Anger. Anybody know what the Hebrew word is for anger? Off. Very good. What's the Hebrew word for the nose? Off. It's the same word. There's no difference. It's the exact same word. Off. It can mean, look it up in Strong's dictionary. I think it's number 321. I think. Don't quote me. Off can mean nose or it can mean anger. Why? Because remember, Hebrew thinking, everything is a picture of action. What is anger? Anger is an abstract. Forget abstract. That's Greek thinking. What do you do when you get angry? You punch him in the nose. Okay, that might work. I think, though, the Hebraic concept is the flaring of the nostrils when you get angry. Your nose gets red. The nostrils flare. So the Hebrews use the same word for both of them. Hey, what is that a picture of? No, it's not a Joshua tree. It was taken in the southwest. But look at the horizon there. It's Arizona. Look at the horizon there. It's kind of hard to see that picture, but with the lighting, but that's okay. What is beyond that horizon? More horizons, space, mountains. What are you guys doing? You are trying to define something you cannot see. That is Greek thinking. Greek thinking says, I have to know what is beyond that horizon. If I don't know, I'm going to guess. We do it all the time. There's more. How do you know it's not a sea on the other side? You don't know. The point is that the horizon is what, beyond the horizon is what you cannot see. The Hebrew word that means beyond the horizon is the word Olam. You recognize the word Olam? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. The king of everything. What is beyond the horizon? In the Tanakh, it says that Yahweh is Olam. Now, it's usually translated as eternal. Eternal. One concept in the Hebrew mind that we often don't understand is that the Hebrews don't care what is beyond the horizon. They don't care. They are only concerned with what's here right now with me. The family, my enemies, whatever is around me, that is their only concern. They're not concerned with what's beyond the horizon. When the Bible says that God is Olam, that he's not just the God of here, but he's also the God of beyond the horizon, what they're saying is that he's beyond my understanding. Because Hebrew words, all Hebrew words that are related to space, are also used for time. Kadem. Kadem is the Hebrew word meaning the east. Which direction? We said the Shema earlier, and Rob and I were trying to figure out what direction is east. That way? Okay, that's the east. What happens in the east? Sun rises. Okay? The sun rises in the east. That is also the ancient time. It's the same word used for both things. It can mean the east in space, or it can mean ancient time in time. So when the Bible talks about the eternal God, it's not trying to say he's eternal. In other words, he lives forever and ever. That's the way we think of it in Greek thought. He's saying that he's beyond the, if it uses the word Olam, it's saying that he's beyond the horizon. He's beyond my understanding. If it says that he's the Kadem, because the translators will translate both of them as ancient or eternal. Okay? If they're using the word Kadem, that he's the one that is the ancient one. The one comes from way back. Let's take a look at some Hebrew word studies. Shemot, Exodus 20, verse 6. But showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. How many of us use this word keep? We use it all the time. It's in the Bible, in our translations. But what does keep mean? Shema. It's paralleled with Shema. Let's take a look at the Hebrew word as shamar. Somebody said it, shamar. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this word tomorrow. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it does mean to guard, to protect. So if we change that and put the word guard in there, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and guard my commands. How many of you can keep all of the laws of God? All of the Torah. How many? Anybody? Okay, let me rephrase that question. How many of you can guard all of the Torah? I'm seeing hands go up now. Yes, we can guard it. We can protect it. There's a difference. They will turn to other gods and serve them and despise me and break my covenant. Now, we think of break as the opposite of keep. Keep we think of as obedience. It's part of it. But keeping is not about obedience. That's the Hebrew word shema. Keeping is preserving and guarding it. Break is the opposite. Literally, this, remember that word we talked about earlier, par, meaning a bull? This is another root from that, parar. Parar means to literally throw it on the ground and trample on it. Well, they would take the seed from the field, throw it out on the threshing floor, and then the bulls, the par, would come in and trample on it to break open the holes. So parar means to throw it on the ground and trample it. That's a little bit different than just breaking a covenant. When the Bible talks about breaking a covenant, it's not talking about how you maybe, missed the mark in one area. It's saying that you're taking that covenant, throwing it on the ground, and trampling all over it. So keeping and breaking the covenant or the commands is not necessarily about how we keep them, whether we do them or how we do them, but what's your attitude towards them. Okay, so it means to trample. Let's plug that into that verse. They will turn to other gods to serve them and despise me and trample my covenant. You see, we've got to get back to the Hebrew concrete meaning of words to really understand what the authors were trying to say. The mouth of the righteous is the fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Righteousness and wicked, are those abstract words or concrete? They're abstracts, which means they are then Greek. So we have to get away from this Greek thinking and look at these words from a Hebraic perspective. Let's start with the word wicked. Wicked is the word rasha. Rasha. And in your translations, it's usually translated as wicked. But there's one place where they do translate it from its concrete way, and they translate it as lost. Lost from the path. In other words, you're walking along. How many of you have been hiking before? You're walking the trail, and all of a sudden you're enjoying the walk and the nature, and all of a sudden you realize, where'd the path go? How many of you have been lost before out in the woods? It's a scary thought, ain't it? It's scary. That is what Rasha is. These are people who are lost from the path. Now, they may have just been walking the path, and said, I don't like this path anymore. I'm going to go make my own. And then they go off into the wilderness and die. Okay. Now, righteousness, 70 some odd times, these two words are used in parallel in the book of Psalms and Proverbs. In other words, they're synonyms or antonyms. Okay? They have opposite meaning. If Rasha means to be lost from the path, what does the word Sadiq mean? To be on the path. Exactly. You see, righteousness, I don't like that word. It's too religious. I don't like religious words. Holy, that's a religious word. I don't like holy. What does kadosh mean? Right. Okay, on the path. Let's plug these into that verse. The mouth of the one who walks on the path is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the ones lost from the path conceal violence. To me, that just makes a lot more sense. Whoa, got to back up here. Whoa. All right, the Aaronic blessing. I think most of us could recite it. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom, peace. A lot of Greek words in there. A lot of abstracts. What would happen if we took all these Greek concepts and threw them away and plugged in there all of the Hebraic concrete meaning of each one of those words? You think maybe this might change a little bit? Anybody want to see what it's going to say? Okay. All right. Yahweh will kneel before you presenting gifts and will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yahweh will illuminate the wholeness of his being toward you, bringing order. And he will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahweh will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon you, and he will set in place all you need to be whole and complete. Do I have a hard copy of that? No, but it's on my website. So you can get off of there. Or if you come see me, I can probably make a copy or something. We'll work something out. Anyway, that word means haketz. That's the end of this. Now, what time? Did I go through that fast enough? What time is it? You want to see it again? I don't know. All right, excellent. I want to jump into one other slide presentation that I have here on some ancient Hebrew inscriptions. Okay, we've talked about the ancient Hebrew alphabet. Now you're going to see some actual scripts that have been discovered in archaeology over the years with some of these as examples. Okay, we're going to start with the early. I divide Hebrew up into four time frames. Early Hebrew, which is the pictographic. The Middle Hebrew, which is what most people call Paleo-Hebrew. Late Hebrew, which is the started using the Aramaic script, and then modern Hebrew, which is very similar to the late Hebrew, but slightly different. This is this was found in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, Sarabit El Kadim, I believe it's called. Some of you might have heard of it. If you go on the home page of my website, I've got a clip from YouTube from the Naked Archaeologist where he went down and actually looked at these. I mean, it's amazing, amazing. What is this right here a picture of? There's the Aleph, exactly. There's a picture of it. This thing, by the way, is 3,500 years old. Man, that just amazes me. This is one's kind of hard to see, but there's the Lamed. It's the shepherd's staff. What does the Hebrew word Aleph Lamed spell? L. Then this is the letter Mem. Mem is used as a prefix to a word means from. So this is Ma'el, from God. From God. Here's another example of the pictographic script. Whoop, 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 whoop. Hit the wrong button. There we go. Okay, this is a mem and a tav. What's mot? Death. Lamed, bet, probably an ayin, but it could be a pei. Not sure. A lamed and a t. I believe this is baalt. Mot le baalt. Death to the feminine form of Baal. Baalt would be Mrs. Baal. That, by the way, is just an educated guess. There's really not enough information here to actually make a definitive translation, but that's pretty close. Anybody recognize that word right off the bat? Aleph-bet. What's that word? Av. What does Av mean? Oh. 10 pole. There you go. Thank you. This is an exciting one. This one was found only a few years ago by a husband and wife archaeologist team. They were on the Nile River, and they went hiking up along this road, and they found this inscription. So this is in Egypt, and it's estimated it was written at around 1800 BC. That's almost 4,000 years ago. This is to date the oldest example of the pictographic script. But it says, and this again is an educated guess, Rav, which is many, Kum, rise, Veha, which means and the, and then there's something here, I don't know what this word here is. Then I can't read the rest of it. A little washed. The word ear, ear to the city. So that's just a rough guess of what it means. But this is kind of exciting because every few years, see, the scholars are saying that the oldest Hebrew goes back 2,000 years or 3,000 years. And then a few years later, they find, oh, now we found out it's 2,500 years. Oh, now we found out it's 2,800 years. You see, I believe Hebrew was the script used before the flood. I believe it goes all the way back to the beginning. And I think one day we might be able to prove it. We'll see, I don't know. Okay, middle. This is some examples of the Middle Semitic script, or Paleo-Hebrew. This is the Tel Dan inscription. Is there any way we can turn these lights down a little bit up here to see these a little better? Because this one's kind of cool. How many of you have heard it said that there is nothing found in the archaeological record that supports the biblical text? How many of you have heard that? A few. There has never been one archaeological evidence found that proves anything in the Bible. I've heard it before, and it's flat wrong. And here's one example. This right here says Melech Yisrael, King of Israel. Guess what it says right above it? Where is it? Beit. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's right below it. There it is. Beit David, House of David. On two lines, we have the King of Israel and the House of David. That's exciting. This is an image of the Samaritan Pentateuch. Samaritans are a group of people in Israel who never left the land. They stayed there. But their Torah scrolls that they use today still use the Middle Semitic script, the Paleo-Hebrew. Their version, by the way, is very different from our Tanakh, but I just find it interesting they're still using Paleo-Hebrew. This is what's called the Temple Ostraca. And you'll see right here, Le Beit Yahweh, to the house of Yahweh. This is actually a receipt for a donation of shekels, three shekels to the temple of Yahweh, to the house of Yahweh. This, by the way, is the inscription that caused me to start learning Paleo-Hebrew, because I was learning Hebrew like everybody else. I went to a synagogue with a friend of mine, learned the Aleph-Bet, and I started learning Hebrew that way. Picked up some books. Then I saw a newspaper clipping in my local paper with a picture of this, and they said that's a Hebrew script. I thought, that don't look like Hebrew. That's not the Hebrew I'm learning. I want to know what this is. So that's how I got started in all of this. This is, how many of you heard that the Dead Sea Scrolls are all written in the modern Hebrew script or the Aramaic script? Okay. A lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls are written in the Aramaic script, but some of them are still being written in the Paleo-Hebrew, which means what I was taught, or what I was told, is that Paleo-Hebrew stopped being used when Israel went into Babylon. They adopted the Aramaic script. And that's not true. It is for the most part, but they still use the Paleo-Hebrew even while they were in captivity, and some of the Sea Scrolls written between 100 BC and 70 AD are still being written in the Paleo-Hebrew. This is a Greek fragment from the Septuagint, a very, very old fragment of the Greek Septuagint. The Greek Septuagint is a 2,000-year-old Greek translation of the Tanakh, okay, without going into too many details. And it's written in Greek. But right here in that little box, guess what that is? Yahweh written in Paleo-Hebrew. See, the Jewish scribes, whenever, and I think it's in the next one too. No, not yet. I'll come to that one. But the Jewish scribes, whenever they were writing the name, even if it was using in the Greek or if they were writing in the Aramaic square script, whenever they came to Yahweh, they would always write it in the Paleo-Hebrew. Okay. This is the word Shema written in Paleo-Hebrew or Middle Semitic script. This was a piece of pottery, and it was just when the pottery was wet, they scribbled in there Shema. Notice you've got the Shin, the Mem, and the Ayin. Now this is dated to about 600 BC. That's the time frame they were using the Paleo-Hebrew. But this coin is around the time of Yeshua. You recognize the letters there? The Shin, the Mem, and the Ayin. It's the word Shema, meaning to hear. So the Paleo-Hebrew, and I'm going to talk more about this on Saturday, the Semitic origins of the New Testament. Paleo-Hebrew is still being used into the days of Yeshua. All right. This is a Paleo-Hebrew inscription of the Ten Commandments. It's written in Paleo-Hebrew. Some of you will recognize this. Keep your mouth shut. Don't say it. Okay? Paleo-Hebrew, the Ten Commandments. This script was used around 800 BC. Between 900 600 BC is when it was extensively being used. This inscription was not found in Israel. This inscription was not found in Egypt. This inscription was found in New Mexico. Some of you have heard of it. What's it called? The Las Lunas inscription. Las Lunas is the name of the town in New Mexico. And when it was originally discovered by the white man, because the Indians knew about it, they called it Mystery Mountain. The Indians knew about this rock, and they took some white men up there and showed it to them in 1855. And in 1855, nobody knew what Paleo-Hebrew was, let alone what it said. So the scholars saw it and thought it was Cherokee. Well, guess what? It says, Ani Yahweh Eloheinu Hotzi. I am the Lord your God who takes you out. And it continues on down through it's a paraphrased version of the Ten Commandments. In New Mexico, dated to around 3,000 years ago, almost 3,000 years ago. The sad thing is, here is up at the top, is that top line. Anochi Yahweh Elohecha Asher Hotzitecha. That's what it says. I am the Lord your God who takes you out B'Mitzrayim, land of Mitzrayim. That top line right there is how it looked like a year ago. This is how it looks now. Somebody went up there and scratched that whole top line off. Yeah. Okay, let's jump into the late Hebrew script. This is when they started adopting the Aramaic square, what we call square script. But if you'll notice, again, like I said before, whenever they came to the name of Yahweh, they recognized its uniqueness, and they would use the Paleo-Hebrew for the name of God, Yahweh. This is just an example from the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is an interesting one. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to talk about it on Saturday. So you got to be here on Saturday. This is a Nash papyrus. This is the oldest scroll or the oldest fragment ever found of the Bible up until the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was dated about 200 BC. And at that time, 100 years ago, this was the oldest example, and there wasn't much of it. The oldest Bible we had was only 1,000 years old, the Codex Leningrad. But this was a fragment that was found about 100 years ago, and it showed Hebrew of the book. That's actually the Ten Commandments as well. The modern Hebrew script. This is, if you open up a Hebrew Bible today, go to the Bible bookstore, this is what you're going to see, something very similar to this. And with the Nakud, the vowel pointing is in there. There's the two major ones are the Aleppo Codex and the Codex Leningrad. Very similar, but two different traditions of the Hebrew. This is an interesting one. How many of you heard the word cuneiform? Cuneiform is Greek. It means wedge writing. And the Sumerians commonly used cuneiform to write their writings. But what's interesting is that this is not Sumerian, this is Hebrew. It's Ugarit. And Ugarit has 28 letters in their alphabet. And it's virtually identical to Hebrew, the language. It's virtually identical, it's just that they use cuneiform. Some people actually call this Hebrew cuneiform. How many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet? You sure? You sure? I believe there was originally 28, to match what the Ugarit has. I can show that there is 23 for sure. The ayin was originally two different letters, the ayin and the gayin, which in Arabic, by the way, there is two. There's the ayin and the gayin in Arabic. They've retained both of them. But there's also evidence that other letters were combined as well. So the Hebrew language had evolved from its original state. All right. Any questions on these slides? What we went over here? The pictures of these, no. What I introduced you with the Hebrew alphabet, yeah, it's kind of in all of them, in various places. But most of this is on the website too. Yes? Yes. That's a good question. That multiple alt I read from left to right instead of right to left, because after all, we know that Hebrew is always written from right to left, right? Wrong. Why? That's a good question. First of all, why was Hebrew written from right to left? Let's see if I can do this. Huh? Close. What was the original form of medium? Rock and chisel. If I'm right-handed, I got to hold the hammer in the right hand and hold the chisel in the left hand. What direction am I writing? From right to left. It's just natural. Okay, can everybody hear me? It's natural. However, if I'm going to write with ink, I did not want to write from right to left because I'll smudge the ink, so they would write ink left to right. Okay? So originally, these ancient languages were written in both directions. You could actually, they found evidences where Hebrew's being written in both directions. How do you know which way to read it, though? You reverse the direction of, instead of the ox head facing, if the ox head's facing this way, you read it from right to left. But if the ox head's facing this way, then you read it from left to right. They would just reverse the letters. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? Yes. Very well, actually. Oh, there's still some that read some of my reviews on Google, or Amazon for my lexicon and my translation of Genesis. You'll see some people's, but there are a lot of universities that use my books. They have them in their libraries. They're starting to use it. There's more and more people that are starting to accept this way of understanding Hebrew. Okay? All right, we have time maybe to do one more. Okay, we got time. Yeah. No. In Hebrew thought, God is not eternal. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? But see, Hebrew don't care what's eternal. They're not concerned with eternity. The ancient Hebrews were not concerned with eternity. It's not a concept they even considered. So, where is that found? Life evermore. I'd have to look at it in the Hebrew to see what words are. Uh-huh. Let's take a look at it in the Hebrew at the break. We'll look at it in the Hebrew, see what words there are. See, the problem is the translators are translating the Hebrew text from a Greek perspective, and that's what we're forced to use. When I asked you how many of you are learning Hebrew, several of you, quite a few of them raised your hand. Why? Because you've recognized the problem with the translations. And we'll see some examples of this tomorrow. We already looked at a couple on those slides there. There's problems with our translations. They're Greek thinking. We've got to look at the Hebrew. And believe me, and you'll see some examples of this through the weekend, that when you start looking at the text from a Hebrew perspective, looking at the language for what it says, you're going to be blown away, like the Aaronic blessing. Okay? Let's jump into one more here. Yeah. Okay, life, Olam. Beyond the horizon. In other words, a life that's going to go on. How long? We don't know. It doesn't mean forever. It doesn't mean eternal. It just means a life that goes beyond the horizon. It's beyond what I can perceive. Beyond our understanding. Okay? Yes. On Saturday. Yeah. Of course, we only have an hour and a half, so it's not going to be a whole lot in depth, but you'll see some examples of it. Huh? Oh, well, okay. All right, let's jump into one more slideshow I have here. Yes, go ahead. A covenant that goes on and on. How long? Don't know. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, it is different. When you start looking at the Hebrew language from this perspective, a lot of things change. And sometimes we have to adjust how we view the Bible. Sometimes we have to adjust our theology to match what the Hebrew author, and that's the important question. What did the author mean? When the Bible talks about stars, is it talking about balls of gas a billion miles away? Is that what the author was thinking when he talks about stars? No, because he had no concept of that. So you have to put his mind into you. How did he perceive the stars? What did a star mean to the ancient Hebrews? Yeah. Forever. Le'olam va'ed. That's a good one. You'll see for something or other, forever and ever. Okay? That's the Hebrew le'olam va'ed. Le means to. Olam, beyond the horizon. So le'olam means to beyond the horizon. But then it says va'ed, and again. To the horizon and again. So not just afar off, but way out there. Okay? That's how the Hebrews were conveying this idea that this is really beyond me. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. The tzitzit. What is a tzitzit? A remembrance. What does the word tzitzit mean? Fringe. Okay. Tzitzit. Comes from the root tzitz. Okay, roots, very important. You got to understand the roots of words. Tzitz is a root that means blossoms. 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 Now, when I first started studying this word a few years back, I was concentrating on the tzitzit, trying to figure out its meaning and stuff. I go, blossoms. Did these tzitzit used to look like blossoms? What was my mistake? I was thinking Greek. Because as we'll learn tomorrow, one of the keys is Hebrew thought, is that Hebrews don't think with appearance, but with function. So, that's right, function. What is the function of a blossom? The fruit is to bring about fruit. What is the Numbers 15, is it Numbers 15? Thank you. Numbers 15 say, why do we put the tzitzit on? So that you will remember and keep to do my commandments. What is fruit? To do the commandments. You see the connection there between the tzitzit that you wear and the blossoms. They both bring about fruit. Speak to the people of Israel and bid them to make tassels, tzitzit, on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put upon the tzitzit of each corner a cord of blue. And it shall be to you a tzitzit to look upon and to remember all the commandments of Yahweh, to do them, not to follow after your own heart and your own eyes, which you are inclined to go after wantonly. So you shall remember to do all my commandments and be holy to your God. The purpose of the tzitzit is to be a blossom, to bring about fruit. In Mark 6:56, we read, and wheresoever he, that's Yeshua, entered into villages or into cities or in the country. They laid the sick in the marketplace and besought him that they might touch, if it were, but the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. Now that word border there in the Greek is kraspedon. And this is where the Septuagint comes in handy. The Septuagint is the 2,000-year-old Greek translation of the Tanakh. If you go to Numbers 15 with the tzitzit and look it up in the Septuagint, they use the Greek word kraspedon. So now we know that kraspedon was used for the Hebrew word tzitzit. So the Greek word there, kraspedon, the translators translate as border. Some of them say hem of the garment. But the Hebrew there is tzitzit. They grabbed the tzitzit and went to grab a tzitzit to make them whole, to make them well. Why? Why in the world would somebody go, oh, I need to grab a tzitzit so I can be made well? What did they know that we may not know? Healing in the wings of his garment. Oh, kraspedon, that's the Greek word there. Malachi 4:2. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. The Hebrew word for wing, no, wait a minute. The Hebrew word for wing, I guess I don't have it on there, is kanaf. Kanaf. The word kanaf can mean a wing of a bird, or it can mean the corner of something. When Numbers says put the tzitzit on the corners, it's the konfot, the kanaf. Konfot is the plural of the garments. So he'll come with healing in his corners. There's one other problem here in this verse, and it bothered me for a long time. This is not S-O-N, the Son, that's like the Son of God, S-O-N. It's S-U-N. I really had a problem with that, because here's the Son, God. This is the Persian god Ahura Mazda. Okay? And he's the Son, S-U-N, God. This is a bas relief of the Son with wings. This is the Son with wings. The Son with healing in his wings. I had a little problem with that. I go, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't line up with what I'm learning from Torah. Am I supposed to be worshiping Ahura Mazda? Okay, hold on a second there. How do I get rid of that? Okay. All right, this is Egyptian, the Egyptian god Horus. There's the Son with the wings. Okay? Anybody feel a little uncomfortable about this? Here's the problem. Okay, first of all, wing. Oh, there it is, kanaf. There's the Hebrew word kanaf. Means the corner. Son. Anybody know what the Hebrew word is for son? Shemesh. Very good. Excellent. There's the Hebrew word shemesh. Shin, mem, shin. Now, in the Masoretic text, which is only 1,000 years old, the vowel pointings are put in there, and they put in the tsere vowel pointings, which makes it pronounced shemesh. But those were not originally there in the original text. Those vowel pointings were not there. They're not part of the original text. What's the word for servant? Shamash. The shamash candle on the Hanukkah, the shamash means servant. It's spelled in Hebrew. Whoops, I don't have it there. Sorry. Let's go back. It's spelled just like that. They're identical. So what if, forget the vowel pointings in the Masoretic text, what if it didn't say the Son of Righteousness, the Shemesh Tzaddik, but what about Shamash Tzaddik, the servant of righteousness? Ah, now that made sense to me. It's the same Hebrew word. It's the same spelling. Okay, so, but for you who fear my name, the servant of righteousness shall rise with healing in his corners. Oh, that was it. Okay, there's one other thing about the tzitzit. The woman that came to the woman with the issue of blood that came to him. Anybody have difficulty with that, or really I don't understand what's going on there? She comes up to him. She's had bleeding for 12 years, so she runs up. We understand now why she grabbed his tzitzit. Okay, we understand that because she knew that he had healing in his wings. She understood who he was, and she was instantly healed. Now, what was Yeshua going to do at this time? Where was he headed? No, not Lazarus. was he headed? Cyrus, is that the little girl? Yeah, the little girl that died. They'd asked him to come and heal her. Now, what would happen if Yeshua walked into that room with her? He would become unclean. Personally, I don't believe Yeshua ever made himself unclean. So I think he's on his way, and he's saying, well, God, I'm just going to have to trust you because I know that I would become, I'm going to make myself unclean if I walk in this room. Because there's a dead body there. Come close to a dead body, you become unclean. So what happened when that woman touched him? He became unclean. He did not make himself unclean. When she touched him, because she had an issue of blood, she made him unclean. See, so he did not make himself unclean. All right, any questions? About ready to close here? Any others? Yes, back there. Yes. Okay, I think what your question is can I take each picture of each letter and put them together to determine the original meaning of the word? Is that right? Okay. Yes and no. First of all, when I'm working on a word to try and find its definitions, I take many, many things into account. Because you see, there is no lexicon or no dictionary that defines Hebrew words without Greek influence until now. Okay, that's what my lexicon was for. But what I did was I took how that word was used in context, what other words is it paralleled with, what is that word used in other Semitic languages like Akkadian, Ugarit, and all of those, even Arabic, even modern Hebrew, taking all those into account. And then part of that is what do those letters in that word mean? What is its root? What is the meaning of other words that are related to it? All of this process went into trying to determine the original meaning of a Hebrew word. Part of that, only one part of that, is looking at the letters of it. Now, the smaller the word, the easier it is, starting with the parent roots. Most all of the parent roots, it's fairly easy to see its definition within those two letters. But when you start adding other letters to it, it gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit more difficult. Okay? Yeah. Okay, very quickly. So you want to know what each of my books are? The ones I have here for sale. The Ancient Hebrew Language and Alphabet is kind of an overview of what we did in the first session here. Okay, looking at the original Hebrew alphabet. And then it has a parent root dictionary, just a parent root dictionary in the back of it. The Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible is the lexicon which goes into every Hebrew word. There, she's holding it up there. Goes into every word from an ancient Hebrew perspective and groups all the words and roots together that are related. Now, if you get that, don't get the Ancient Hebrew Language and Alphabet. If you already did, return it. Okay? Because most everything that's the Ancient Hebrew Language and Alphabet is in that book. Okay? His Name is One goes into the various names of God from an ancient Hebrew perspective. The Living Words, Volume 1, goes into a lot of different words and phrases in the Bible and looks at them from an ancient Hebrew perspective. Just kind of a conglomeration. The mechanical translation of Genesis is a new style of translation that I created where I take every Hebrew word and translate it exactly the same way every time it appears in the text. And in the same order that is in Hebrew. For example, Genesis 1:1. In summit, Elohim fattened at the skies and at the land. Okay? That's a literal word-for-word translation. Prefix for prefix, suffix for suffix. There's also a dictionary in the back of it that defines like summit. Why did I use the word summit? Well, the dictionary there defines that. Then it comes with a revised translation, which takes all those words, kind of rearranges them so it makes sense in English. In the summit, Elohim filled up or fattened up the skies and the land. Okay? I think that's all of them I have. Oh, learn to read biblical Hebrew. If you want to learn Hebrew, it's got lessons in there. But also recognize I have the lessons on my website with audio. They're free. So if you want to learn Hebrew, please go to my site and try there. I have a lot of people that use it. Yeah, your hand went up again. I'm working on Exodus now. No, because, well, it's in the editing process right now. Well, I've got the mechanical translation done. I'm working on the revised right now, and I've got editors that are helping me. I don't really want to put it out yet because there's probably still some errors in there. But I hope to have it done and published within about 4 months. Okay? Yes? You're welcome. Yeah, it's www.ancient_Hebrew.org. If you go to Google, just type in ancient Hebrew. It's in the books. Oh, it's in the booklet you got here too. They put it in the booklet. The syllabus? Okay. All right. I think time's up here. I want to say thank you all for bearing with me and with our technical difficulties.